Alafia, welcome everybody to our Talking Roots show. This is our first Talking Roots show. We are here in Oya's house doing this show about the ancestors, what the ancestors want to talk about. I am here, Ia Olusoga Bisiade, with our Oya and ancestral priest, Ia Oya Ayode.
Alafia.
Yes. So, I have let you all know that we are going to be doing some things in reference to the ancestors. And one topic, there are many topics, but one topic that stood out for both myself and Ia Oya Ayode was the importance about understanding why we need to know where we came from. And so many of us in the diaspora and the Ma'afa don't have that information. And to receive that information here outside of the continent of Africa, so here in the United States and the Caribbean, many of you probably have heard of roots readings. And roots readings is a wonderful way to get that information. But Ia and I had looked at the show Roots and watching the latest, I think that's 2016.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
The 2016 Roots, four shows?
That's four. Mm-hmm. Four episodes.
Mm-hmm. Brought up some really strong questions. So let's talk about the importance of why you should have a roots reading. The roots reading it's more than just knowing what part of the continent of Africa your people have come from or your lineage has descended from. But more important, that is important, but more important, it's really about you beginning to take steps to resolve some familial issues. The sun is in Cancer as we're speaking right now. And that's all about family. And the sign of Cancer is ruling the fourth house. That's all about your roots. So this is an appropriate time where we are cosmically to begin to talk about the ancestors. So welcome to our show.
Adupoyo Ia Ade for the inspiration and really listening to the ancestors and being obedient and trusting them, right?
Yeah.
And trusting them to initiate this next level of your body of work, which is really essential because there is no one who doesn't have ancestors.
That's right.
I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you come from. There is no one that doesn't have ancestors, and there is no one whose ancestors don't impact their contemporary existence. And so for all of us, it is important that we spend some time in reflection, in study, in research, and in the upliftment of our ancestors, because we want to understand a deeper part of ourselves through their behavior, through their successes, through their challenges. And we also want to be healers for our lineages. And so we can then think about those things that caused mishaps or that caused difficulties in our plans and begin to look at our here and now family and begin to work on those things. So Ekushe Dada for just absolutely being obedient and initiating this beautiful space called Talking Roots for the tradition of Egungun veneration, and ancestral veneration to be exposed and discussed and talked about in a meaningful way.
I say. So, I had mentioned when I first opened up about roots, and this is the newer version of Roots that came out, I think it was 2016 or 2017, 2016. um, which was, it was difficult to watch, as I'm sure you would suspect. But it was beautiful as it began to delve a little bit more into the spiritual nuances of its ancestral self. And in watching that, it triggered in both of us some questions, or more some revelations that we felt was important to bring forth to people to also think about their own ancestral selves. And so I'm going to jump back and forth talking about Roots. So in Roots, when it started out, there's like this theme that keeps happening over and over and over with each generation, each segment. And again, I said there's 4 segments. That there's just this nuance of this thing that keeps happening. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
It seemed to me in this watching of Roots that there was generational Ire and generational Osobo that began on the continent very often because of the Ma'afa. What we know of our ancestors are our contemporary ancestors in terms of their actions, their proclivities, their accomplishments, all of those things. We know those things because it's low-hanging fruit. We can get to them. However, they are sons and daughters of. So there's a root literally to that tree, right, of that behavior somewhere, or of that modality. And what I saw in Roots, in this watching of Roots, was that one of the things, sometimes those of us in the culture will talk about what got you on the boat, right? what got you on the boat.
Right.
And when we say that, we're talking about what behavior or interaction or what lack of discipline, whatever. What was the thing that made your family vulnerable to being taken and put on the boat? And then this generational expression of the Ma'afa, and then living in the diaspora. What was it? And so in Roots, what I saw consistently in each generation, the generations that we see in the film, were there was a sense of loyalty. Now, loyalty in general terms is a great thing, right? Like, you want to be a loyal person. I like being called loyal. I want to be loyal to my sister. However, there was like a loyalty without consideration of self. So you see Kunta Kinte's father and his loyalty to the chief and the clan, right? You see that put him at odds with the kidnappers and the slavers who were Africans in that particular instance. So you see that, and you see the difficulty that created, and you see when the slavers had the opportunity to get revenge on Kunta Kinte's father, they did so through his son, Kunta Kinte, right? But there was also a piece around rebellion, because in the film, so I'm assuming that in the storyline itself, that when Kunta left the village, the safety of the village, because he wanted to go study at Timbuktu after he had been through his rites of passage. He was a very strong-willed young man, and he wanted to venture away from the clan and wanted to go study in Timbuktu. So in the scene, we see him leaving the compound. We see him leaving the village on a horse, and in defiance of his father, in defiance of his elders. Right? He decided he knew better than his elders knew in that instance.
Right.
I know more than you do. I want to do this, and so therefore, I'm going to go do it. And when he went to do it, there we have, right?
He got caught up.
He got caught up. The third thing in that instance, this is all in that very first segment. He had his eye on a beautiful young woman, right? He wanted to be with her. His father says to him, "Forget about her. We can make you a better match." But he was like, no, I want her. right? I want her. So there were several things that kind of led to the perfect storm, or imperfect storm, if you will, of creating the circumstances. And all of our people there were things that created the circumstances that made us vulnerable to be taken, or vulnerable to the destiny of, coming to the, being a part of the diasporic experience, because there's some divinity in that as well. But there's absolutely those three things for me: disobedience to the elders, loyalty beyond your own concern or your own best being or your own well-being, and then arrogance. I know better. This is what I want.
Right.
I'm going to do this.
Right. And so, and if we just step back and look at that and say, well, what's wrong with having a desire to go off and do what it is that you want to do? Back then, at that time, generationally, people across the world, the globe, always were expected to follow the wishes of their parents. Again, across the globe. So this young man, being strong-willed and strong-minded, had in his head that he wanted to go and do something additional. He fulfilled the promises or expectations of his village, and he wanted to do something else. And there's nothing wrong with that, but what he did not understand was that he needed to have deeper insight into the decisions that he was making. As a young person, we don't ask why. We just say, I want to do this, I want to do that. We have a desire to do something. But he did not ask why. Now, I'm not sure in the story of Roots, but I would suspect that there was like maybe some wise men or wise people in his lineage or in his nation, in his family rather, that were very very learned, very skilled, very wise. And I'm saying that because in the story he wanted to go to Timbuktu to study. So possibly within his family there were also those that had that kind of mind where they would inquire as to the deepness of a particular situation. And so I'm putting a page mark right now on that statement, because we're going to move into the next other segments in a moment. But page marking that thought that these people in his lineage were obviously very deep thinkers. This young man has the potential to be a deep thinker, and he wanted to exercise that. So that would be like their gift, or their array, in addition to being great warriors, which is expected in their small nation anyway. But within his family, from his father would seem to have been very skilled in deciding, okay, you should do this, you should do that.
You should do that. There was clarity of purpose.
There
was clarity of purpose, and we have to remember that, when a child came, there was divination of some sort done. So there was some understanding of what this child's trajectory needed to be to fulfill his destiny. And your parents walk with that. Parents walk with that. Your elders walk with that. They know that. And so prayerfully, when they give you direction, when they give you instruction, they do so with that in mind.
Right.
With that in mind.
And so having an understanding that on the continents of Africa, North, South, East, and West, especially back then, nothing was done without first seeking the oracle or seeking the ancestors or seeking whatever divinity that they were able to tap into to get their answers. This young man obviously knew that existed, but he chose to follow his own mind, his own heart, without seeking that guidance. And so that would have been the ability to tap in. Would have been one of their erays or their blessings, their gifts. Not listening to that and being headstrong and deciding that you know best would have been one of their osobos or their challenges. What we say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we take that, and it then created, as ES says here, a perfect or imperfect storm to now bring him to the shores of America.
And when he gets to the shores of America, you know, that's saying that you don't leave who you are on the ship. You leave a lot of things, but your essence, your being, who you are, your core, those things are not left behind. And so we know in that particular storyline that there was consistent resistance, you know, which is really a beautiful thing in spirit, right? The resistance to being enslaved, the resistance to being called anything besides Kunta Kinte, the resistance to any of the trappings of this slaveocracy, any of those trappings. He resisted consistently, resisted, which is beautiful, and retained as much as he could from what had already been poured into him from his elders in was it a Mandinka village?
Yes, the Mandinka.
And then in the Mandinka village. So there was this consistent kind of cultivating and nurturing, which is Iray, of all those things that his parents and his elders had put into him, that he was really holding on to, and then also this resistance of any of those things that are Western. Even if you haven't seen this version of Roots, the previous version of Roots, we know that he ran several times.
Right.
And in the last time he was run, he ran and was caught, then they cut off half the foot. But in cutting off half the foot, the woman who nursed him back to health also then becomes his wife.
Right.
Right? And so again, this perfect storm of what that kind of behavior, those characteristics, those attributes that were naturally who he was, put him in a position again, right? A perfect or imperfect storm, but it leads to this union, which then gives us the legacy of generation after generation, which gives us Alex Haley, which God bless him for fulfilling his destiny, and takes literally a whole nation of black folk back to the understanding. It didn't care who you practiced, what you were, right? Whatever you did. Generations were watching that first creation, that first broadcast of Roots Together. Generations of people were then understanding and acknowledging and wanting to move forward with understanding that their family lineages did not start in America and in slavery.
Sure.
And so that tenacity that Kunta represented, right? And also that strong-willedness, residual existed in Alex Haley. And his tenacity about, I'm going to find my people. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to understand who I am. I want to know this song that I keep hearing in my head, or this tradition of taking the baby outside. I want to know what's at the root of that. I want to understand that, right? I want to understand that.
Yeah. So as you were speaking about Alex Haley giving the world the opportunity to say, I want to know that. I want to know that. That is, if you follow the story of Roots, and we're not here to push Roots. We're using Roots as an example as to why it's important to know ancestrally and spiritually where you come from, so that you begin the process of healing thyself, and that includes your ancestors and your family. So as she was talking about Alex Haley wanting to know, that is that key um, array that Kunta Kinte and his progenitors, his descendants and all have. Because, again, let's jump back. He wanted to study. He wanted to go to Timbuktu and study. Kizzy wanted to learn how to read. Right?
Yes.
Chicken George, though he initially did not want to learn how to read, he wanted to learn and understand how he needed knowledge. He understood the importance of being able to know how to maneuver through life and not just do as you're told, but he wanted to learn how to be strategic.
Right.
Okay. Eventually, he learned how to read, and then each generation, I think, if you saw Queen, even she,
right,
and she wasn't even, she was a different line.
She was his mother's line,
but that's really important. So we're gonna bookmark that, and then we keep going forward until we get to Alex Haley, who was a learned man.
Right.
So in that family, if he was to get a roots reading, in that family, he would have found out that he comes from a long line of scholars.
That's it.
A long line of scholars. And his mother's side, Queen, she wasn't supposed to know how to read, but she learned how to read as well. So there's always this shared gift that people tend to have when they begin to get their roots reading. You get your mother's side done, you get your father's side done, and you're going to find that they have something that's shared. And for him, I would say it was scholastic.
It was scholastic and entrepreneurial.
Right,
like making something out of nothing. Being savvy in that way, to protect what you have and to amplify that out into the world. Absolutely.
So now, what now the Osobo, the challenge. Each generation, there was a challenge.
Yeah, so we see the challenge, we see the father, we see Kunta Kinte's father with that level of loyalty to the king, right? To the king. But behaving as he should as a warrior. We see fast forwarding to Kunta Kinte on this soil. We see the loyalty that Kizzy has for the young woman. When she was a child, right? And the young girl taught her how to read.
Yeah.
The young girl taught her how to read, and the enslaver, the kidnapper, found out. And so, we know, anecdotal evidence and history teaches us that, reading was banned for the African. That wasn't something they could do. But Kizzy is loyal to her still.
Right.
And she betrays Kizzy. She betrays her, essentially, which is a thing that has Kizzy removed from that particular plantation. Then there's a piece where Chicken George, we fast forward to that generation, Chicken George being Kizzy's son, we fast forward to that generation, and we see Chicken George being loyal to the man who's actually his father, right? And the enslaver, and believing that he will be fair and just with him.
Right.
Believing that he will be fair and just with him.
Yeah.
And so moving forward on a promise he made to him. And the enslaver was true to form and did not honor the promise. And so therefore then he sends Chicken George away from his family and sends him to London, to England. And he was there for a few decades. So we see consistently, right, the spaces in which loyalty was a space of Osobo for that clan. Again, loyalty is not a bad thing, but it's like at what point blind loyalty, right? At what point is self-preservation a part of the equation?
Right. because his son, Chicken George's son.
Yes.
So the blacksmith.
Yes. Also, an issue of loyalty, right? Blind loyalty.
He said, if I just do as they say and just keep my head down.
Exactly.
And then, then how they rape his wife.
Rape his wife. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So. And then we don't have the backstory for what happened in Africa, but my question would be in this moment, right? Because we know that there were some Africans who were complicit in the slave trade.
Yes.
My question would be, if you have a chief and a warrior who's really loyal to you, how does his son get taken? Like how is there not some level of intervention?
Mm-hmm.
Could someone have stopped that? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Right,
but it's like, what are the pieces of that puzzle that could have been interrupters? Mm-hmm. Now, and the complete flip side of it is that all of it had to happen.
Right.
Like all of it had to happen.
Right.
So that clan could get to the soil. So those things that have happened in that clan. So the gifts from that clan could be the gifts to all of us. So all of it had to happen. But how things go down and the ways in which they go down, is there space to mitigate and to shapeshift those things sometimes, and how those things show up in our contemporary existence if we don't know, which is the benefit of the roots reading, right? So if we know, something, our clan was, how did you get on the boat? Blind loyalty and strong-willedness. And then we fast forward to look at our contemporary selves,
right,
and the family members that we know, and we see, oh wow,
you see the same
things
happening
over and over again.
And so, as you said, what can happen to mitigate some of these things that to mitigate and prevent. However, some things are going to happen, but they don't have to be so harsh. Right. So why then, the question, because I have had people say to me, well why should I have a roots reading? What's the importance of having a roots reading? And this is again why we're talking about roots, because you can go see it for yourself and begin to see the pattern of what we're talking about. And so, and the Orisha say, he who knows does not die like he who does not know.
Sure.
So once you are given information about yourself, hence your people, you are responsible to begin to decide if you're going to change some things about your own behavior and your own thought processes, right? You can't change the people in your family, but you can begin. Everything starts with one, right? Everything starts with ourselves. And so at that point we can begin to say, well, I'm going to approach how I raise, my children differently, or how I interact with my cousins and their kids differently, or, I'll tell them, begin to give them other tools to use, social tools to use, so to implant within their own spirit and their psyche information that will help them navigate through life a bit differently, understanding though that thing, because as much as we have a gift, we also have a challenge. So those things, the gifts and the challenges, are always going to be there. You want to say something?
To your point of understanding, then what tools are important?
Yes.
And as spiritual beings who have access to tools, then it's like, what do we need to put in place for our own self-preservation and the preservation of our line, and what is it that we can do to begin to whittle away at this for those generations that come after us? Right. So there's a pragmatic understanding of it, but it doesn't have to be the personal impactful understanding of it. I ain't got to live it to know it exists. Right. I don't have to go through it to know it's going to be an unfortunate set of circumstances. So how do we make sure that people understand and know this is our tendency? So be aware of this, be mindful of this, without them having to actually go through it and live it and have it impact their lives
so strongly.
So strongly. So because there's so much healing to do in the African community. Mm-hmm. There's so much healing to do. So it would be so much better if we could heal those things. We could concentrate on those things that are right here in the front of us.
Yeah.
Versus, having to generation after generation after generation heal those things that we have dragged with us across the ocean. Mm-hmm. And so the roots reading gives us the clarity to understand what's at the root of that tree. What's at the root of alcoholism in my family? What's at the root of betrayal in my family?
Right.
What's at the root of adultery or abuse in my family? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Those things that tear families apart. What's at the root of that? Mm-hmm. And then how do we do any number of things on any number of spiritual levels, but ourselves being the first of all, right? How do we do any number of things to ensure that we can begin to peel back the layers of that onion, mm-hmm. and really begin to shift the trajectory of our family? So just like the Ma'afa was a hard right turn for generations, because we have access to understanding where we've come from as diasporic Africans, we too can make a hard left turn. We can make a hard left turn, mm-hmm. and change the trajectory of our family. Mm-hmm. We do not have to be beholden to the circumstances of which we find ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have the opportunity to create a new reality. Just like what a new reality was thrust upon us, mm-hmm. we have the opportunity, if we choose to take it, to create a new reality for our people, for our family.
Ashe. So well spoken, so well said, so needed. So needed. And so this is why it's important to get roots readings. And once you get the roots reading, it's more than just, okay, now I have this understanding. Mm-hmm. Now you have also the beginning tools to reconnect and to restructure and to redirect things that are happening within not only your own personal life, but also within your family. Any earth tradition, regardless of its name, always understands clearly that we are returned ancestors. Mm-hmm. Every human being is a returned ancestor. Mm-hmm. We come here not only for ourselves. We're taught that everything is so individualistic. It's not. Mm-hmm. It really is not. We are collectively responsible for each other in the process of our development here on this planet. And so we come here by ourselves, but we don't come here to be by ourselves. Sure. So we come here to learn, unlearn things, mm-hmm. to learn new things, mm-hmm. to remember things, mm-hmm. Never to forget, mm-hmm. but to redirect mm-hmm. those memories mm-hmm. that may come back. Mm-hmm. All for the process of healing our family and ourselves. That was profound. That was very deep.
But it's very real.
But it's very, very real. I mean, we could sit here and talk about testimonies mm-hmm. of how we've seen this work mm-hmm. change people in the family who mm-hmm. are diehard mm-hmm. Christians mm-hmm. or whatever other tradition, whatever their belief system is. Because in our families we have many different mm-hmm. folks that believe many different mm-hmm. things. But just the process of reconnecting to your ancestral self it opens a portal of healing, and so many people receive healing. I could tell you a story of a family member who themselves mm-hmm. started to reconnect to their ancestors, got their roots readings and all, mm-hmm. and follow prescriptions. And in doing that, their siblings who were told that they would never have children, the doctors told them that this set of siblings would never have children. But once that one particular sibling got their roots readings and started the prescriptions and started the process of the work on self, and then working on self started the process of healing their own ancestral line. All those siblings, for some strange reason, all had children.
There we go. There we go.
So you ask, well, what's the purpose of that? Why should I personally get a roots reading? It's bigger
Than you.
And our own human understanding. So the next generation has one less, as Ia says, peeling away the skin, the onion skin. So there's one less layer of osobo or challenge that those children have to deal with while they're here. And those particular relatives are now grandparents.
Ashe. Our elders teach us about the 9 souls.
Yeah.
And so the soul that is least important is the soul of self. That's the least significant. It's the last thing on the list. You know what I'm saying? It's the last thing on the list. With our familiar souls, our gender, our race, all those things being higher on the list, which goes to your point earlier of we come here by ourselves, we don't come to be by ourselves. And that everything that we do as an individual has a residual effect in our line, whether it's cosmically or tangibly. It has an impact, it has an effect. Everything that we do has an impact on our clan, right? So our immediate family, but also our clan. And when you see things have a ripple effect in families, either anyway, just as you just spoke about, but also in challenging aspects, we have to remember as clan members, right? As individual clan members, that what we do, our elders would say, when you go out this house, you're representing me.
Yes.
And and we were like, that's a daunting thing for a kid. Like, I just want to go play. Now I gotta go play, with all of this on my shoulders. But those elders meant that. It is not only are we representing, but I'm also creating energy for this group of people. My actions out in the world are also doing that. One way, for good or for bad, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So all those things are connected. All those things are connected. The other beautiful thing about roots readings is that I have witnessed with other people and bear witness for myself. It's in the relationships you begin to see with greater clarity the people who may not be in your bloodline but who cross your path, right? Or who you have deeper relationships with. You begin to understand, and for me, become less judgmental of people.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
You become much less judgmental. I know if you come from Ogun people, there's a particular way you are gonna get down, and there is nothing that I am going to say or do that is going to change that. Right? There's nothing I'm gonna say or do because that's who you are. That's who you are. That's who you are. Literally, that is who you are. I know if you come from Oshun people, there's a particular way you're gonna get down.
Absolutely.
And I can't do anything about that, and you can't do anything about that, right? So it lessens for me my judgment about people's behaviors if they are different from my own behaviors, right? Because I'm like, oh, that's how they get down, right?
That's
how they get down, and then you know how to better interact with people and build healthier relationships.
So getting roots readings also builds stronger community.
Ashe, absolutely.
Because that's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And that is so true. And I piggyback and put a little check mark next to what you said, because for myself as well, understanding other people within our communities, roots readings, knowing what type of people they come from. You say, and you do say, okay, I get it. Because even coming from or descending from a line of people that worshipped a particular Orisha, they're going to have a propensity to just that there's erase and challenges even within that. Not even talking about the other family challenges and gifts. And so when you begin to understand it, see that right there that then leads to one beginning to understand the importance of culture and tradition. That's right. Because when you begin to understand your own roots, you begin to understand the culture of where you come from. And you begin to understand the importance of knowing and respecting culture and different traditions. It just makes you also a more softer and human being, more tolerant human being. There's so many different gifts that come along with being able to access that information. So that is very true, but it is crucial, and it helps to create a stronger community.
Absolutely. Even when you're thinking about your marriage partner, if you're looking for a partner, or if you are in a relationship, if you're married, or if you're in a relationship that's a long-term relationship, understanding the nuances of when I looked at the roots readings for my clans, I understood my parents' union better.
This is true.
I understood their union better. I was like, oh, okay, well, there we go, right? There were things that made sense about how they dealt with each other. There were things that made sense about how the two clans interacted with one another. That absolutely, I was like, well, there is all of that, right? That put a period to the end of things where there may have been question marks before. There was a person whom came from a clan of people where the women were taken versus the men being taken, right? So there was this perpetual influx of women coming from this country, from the continent, and not many men. And you have a situation where there are very few men in a cultural context, in a community context, and so there is a lack of understanding, right? Because there aren't men to teach the other men.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There are women, right, coming, bearing the cultural knowledge that women have, but not bearing the cultural knowledge that men have.
And so that's an ensemble.
And so the only thing they were able to pass down was the cultural knowledge that they had as women. So there was an imbalance, right? There was an imbalance. The men in that particular clan jumped off, right? They were like, no, we're not doing it. So the women were taken. But as the women intermarried and had children and male children were born, there was not the opportunity for the cultural ethos, the cultural DNA, if you will, to be passed on to male children from people from that place, from that line.
Yeah.
And so then you have men who don't then know how to interact with women appropriately.
And that came all the way.
And came all the way back.
And so then we go into how do we resolve that? Those that know,
right,
can start getting them more involved in sports early, more male clubs, right, and things of that nature.
Right. If it was, violence or disrespect if it was the young people in your clan that got y'all on the boat, if they rose up and said, we're not going to listen to the elders anymore, then when you're raising your children, and even if they're not your biological children, when you're raising, when you're interacting with the young people in your clan, in your community, then that discipline is important for them, because a lack of discipline can get them on the American boat, right? And that looks like
orange is the new black.
Orange is the new black. That's what that looks like, right? So if you know that being true trusting and telling too much of your business is what got you on the boat, then you got to keep your mouth shut and stop talking about all your stuff.
Right.
Don't tell everybody everything. You know.
Yeah, some people
it's
okay.
Right.
They're like, well, I can do that, but if that's what got you on the boat, then know that you can't do that easily. Because it makes you vulnerable.
Right. It makes you vulnerable.
Right.
You know. Right. It makes you vulnerable. So you can't do that so easily. But the other thing that I think is interesting, that we see, we see these things play out in our contemporary existence. If over the course of time, almost like a scab, right, on your body, or a keloid, over the course of time, our ancestors, within our own DNA, we put in protective measures, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes when a thing happens, there's some way that we react in some way that creates or help is our own, self-protection or self-preservation from a thing. So for some of us, if envy of your success got you on the boat, then we see ourselves avoiding success.
Yes.
Because there's something in our spirit that's like, no.
Got me on the boat.
I just can't do it. I can't do it. And so we live beneath ourselves, right? We live beneath ourselves. And so when we know that thing is a thing that got us on the boat, then we can begin to do the work internally, but also with our own spiritual tools to give us the confidence and to let those ego know that, okay, we're good this time. It's okay. It's okay. We don't have to worry about being liked. We don't have to worry about being successful, because in this orientation, in this experience, we have the things to protect us from being from experiencing genocide or homicide or any of thing, or kidnapping, any of those things that would have come to us. For some of us, when we look at like relationships in the African American community and the Black community and the African community, and we see just how fractured things are, some of us, love got us on the boat. Right?
Yeah.
Someone loving you, another person going, I'm going to sell you up the river because this is whatever, right? And so when love comes our way, we like, no, that's okay. I'm good.
Right.
Because love got me on the boat. Being loved by someone got me on the boat. A simplified way of saying that, or loving someone got me on the boat. So then I have over generation after generation of generation, but then my spiritual DNA, I'm like all the way back here. Like people like, So it's important that we dig up those things and those stories, and those understandings, and then we see, if you take a look, generation after generation after generation, it's like, oh yeah, we don't stay married long. Or we don't get married at all.
Or don't marry at all. Or our parents have always been standoffish and didn't give hugs and things of that nature. And we just don't know why. And so, well, it's because, their parents didn't hug, or they just was working so hard they didn't deal with it. But through the roots readings, you find out that it had to do with possibly, as an example, it was all because of love.
All because of love.
And so, why have roots readings? Because then you can begin to break that cycle and start hugging. Hugging your family. Hugging yourself, accepting a hug.
Right.
To begin the process.
That's elbow.
That is elbow.
That's elbow.
That is ritual.
It is ritual.
To begin the process of breaking that. And your aguns and agunguns and all, and let them know that it's okay. And this is, like you said, it's a new orientation. This is a new parameter and dynamic now, and we can now redirect the energy to go into a better, safer, space, more higher altitude place. Right. And we don't have to suffer. And so we'll always suffer, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. It can be something.
We can be learning our own lessons. Versus the lessons of the clan.
Constantly.
Right.
And so this is with roots readings, and you get this information, you get this enlightenment and understanding. Then you look at healing the Osobo and redirecting the energy of the Osobo, while giving a lot of also attention to your creativity, to your array, to the blessings that continuously are reborn from one generation to the next.
Right. Absolutely.
And that brings a balance. That brings a great balance. So our next show, we can maybe focus on the importance of Misa, which is done here on this side of the waters, which is very important.
It's important. It is.
So we're going to talk about that next time. So roots readings. Why are roots readings important? All that we said today.
Yeah. It gives you a blueprint for creating a strategic change in the trajectory of your family. And you are not so internally impacted by externally impacted by the world. You can then make a strategic decision to go left instead of right, because you know if you go left, what's waiting down there for you. But if you go right, you can create a new reality for your people. And the stories that then your descendants tell, when you tell the story of your family, the continuum of their family, they'll get to you, and then we started doing this. You know, we were having all of, these things were happening, and these were the stories, and whatever. And then there'll be this crossroads moment, which is you making the commitment and the decision to seek information and to do the work, and you will be that concentric point at which things take a right turn for your family.
Right.
And what a gift! What a gift!
And the calabash begins to mend.
Yes. What a gift! What a gift!
And that's the purpose of roots readings, everyone.
That's it.
So I thank you all for taking time to listen to our show today. And the next time we talk, we're going to talk about Misa and the importance of Misa. Because why? Because the ancestors are talking. Talking Roots. We'll be back next time. Take care. Yes, take care, everybody.